Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session of TASM 2021. I am Ariel Pinto. I am the organizer of this session, and I'm glad that you're here. And because we have a great topic and even greater set of panelists. Um, so just for us to get a better feel of what this session is about. This is about Disruptive Technology EXperiment. That's the focus, DTeX. It's a new style of simulated game designed to quickly test ideas and technologies developed by NATO's Innovation Hub at the ODU campus here in Norfolk, Virginia, USA. And most recently, it has been used to both descriptive and prescriptive ways to look at the rising number of COVID-19 related disinformation campaign. The core value that hopefully we'll be able to convey to you today about DTeX is its capability to include multidisciplinary perspective when trying to generate and vet various technologies to address wicked problems. That includes cyber risk and terrorism and misinformation. So we will let our panel members introduce themselves briefly. Let me start again. My name
Unfortunately, I think that Ariel is frozen now, so I'm just gonna take over, and I'm just gonna give you all the chance to introduce yourselves. Serge, would you like to start first?
With pleasure. So my name is Serge Dadevko. I'm with the NATO Transformation Command in Norfolk, Virginia, and more specifically with the Innovation Hub, where we have created and evolving the model of the DTeX.
Thank you. Girish?
Hey, my name is Girish. I'm with ODU's Institute for Innovation Entrepreneurship, assigned to the NATO Innovation Unit, who is a close partner, we're located in the same building or the same campus. I work closely with Serge in building the DTeX from scratch over the past 2 years, and I'm the chief architect of the project right now.
Thank you. Thank you. Hingame?
Hello, everyone. My name is Hengam Farfalar. I am PhD student in Engineering Management and System Engineering at ODU, Old-Dominion University. Actually, my research mainly focused on statistical method in analyzing complex system. I joined the last event that is very interesting, and I'm really happy to see you again.
Thank you. I'll just say a few words about myself. My name is Laura Pittman. I'm an adjunct assistant professor with the University of Maine. I teach international security and cybersecurity courses. I helped with DTeX twice so far. And I also was involved in a project about disinformation during COVID-19, funded by the State Department, the US State Department, and organized by CRDF Global. Now, I think we should just start with the first round of questions. I think Ariel is back. Ariel, can you hear us? Can you see us? Ariel, can you hear us? Can you see us?
You're muted, Ariel.
Sorry about that. I'm not sure where I was cut off. So did I miss anything?
We briefly introduced ourselves, and I was just about to ask the first round of questions, but you can probably take over. And
all right, let me do that then. Okay, while I'm still around. All right. So you might see me logged in 2 times. Yeah, that's just exactly. We'll make sure it works. So the first is, I'm pretty sure the attendees would like to know more of how DTeX started, what precipitated its its development, and I guess there's no better person to answer that than Serge. So Serge, can you tell us a bit more about the origin of DTeX?
Yes, you ask the old guys about old stories. So actually the DTeX initially originated more than a decade ago in NATO Transformation Command, in the branch that was by then called Research and Technology, so dedicated to find solutions to NATO issues through research and technology. And the model of the DTeX, which was actually called DTAG at that time for Disruptive Technology Assessment Game, was responding to the need to test and assess new technologies and new concepts from a NATO operational perspective. So what would they bring as benefits or constraints and challenges when these technologies or those concepts are used into a NATO operation? And since ideally you want to test that in an operation or in an exercise, but it's so difficult and so expensive that we really needed to have a simulation environment to be able to conduct those tests. And so this was designed through the DTAG concept, which is very similar to what you see today in the DTeX. So DTeX is an evolution of the DTAG. And actually there was the DTAG that goes for disruptive technology, and a similar process that we call the CDAG for the concept development and assessment game. It was basically the same methodology and technique, but one was really applied to new technology and the other one more applied to new concepts. But this is where it comes from. And when it started, those things were really board games. So they were played on site by NATO personnel and mainly military personnel. And this is how we started. And today with the DTeX, we will go into some details to explain how the concept evolved and developed and is now leveraging new technologies, new methodologies and techniques to do much more than what was possible at the beginning. So that's in a nutshell how everything started.
Thank you, Serge. So I would say let's look a little bit deeper into what DTAG is, what it takes for it to get implemented. So I guess Girish would have some great things to share about how DTAG is implemented, and then later on we'll talk about the experience and value that researchers like myself and Laura and others may have gotten out of their participation. So Girish?
Sure. Thank you. So taking off from where Serge left, the DTeX is exactly an evolved version of the DTAG, and the difference happens to be in the fact that while DTAG looked at imaginary technologies or projected technologies that people would come up with, DTeX is a little more grounded in the sense that it is attached to what the NATO Innovation Hub does as its everyday activity, which is reach out to innovators across the world, from academia, industry, and the crowd, as we like to call it, because everyone in the world has ideas. We had to find a way to funnel these ideas through a process that would help us evaluate them better. So that's a little bit of a background on how DTeX differs from DTAG. And to get into the details of how the process works, there's a few simple elements to it. Number one is the scenario. As Serge mentioned, it has to be realistic. So yeah, you need to build a scenario that is based on real world events from the past, and with a little bit of a futuristic element. So there is the foresight aspect also. But the point is that the ultimate goal of DTAG and DTeX is to make sure NATO is able to solve its problems both now and in the future. So it also includes problems that's being faced right now. So number one, scenario and relevance to reality, and the time frame being now and the near future and the far future, but in that order of importance. The second one is the ideas itself. And like I said, the ideas can range from what DoD calls technology readiness levels, TRLs, all technology readiness levels. It could be a simple idea that you thought of and haven't even scratched a prototype of, but wrote a one-pager on, or a advanced product that is being used by some other organizations that can be either directly adopted or modified for NATO's use. So that's the second element, the technologies. And the third are the players, and the players are the critical element, because it's all about the human ingenuity that comes through the processes of DTeX or DTeX. You made a point about multidisciplinary nature of DTeX, Ariel, in the beginning, and this is where that primarily comes in, because we try to make sure that teams have people from different backgrounds, different perspectives, different strengths, etc., that complement each other. And so those are the three main elements. You have the scenario that the ideas are played against, the ideas that are played in that scenario, and the players who play these ideas in that scenario. And we make sure we facilitate the process in a very carefully planned way, and that differs based on the topic. So the facilitator there's a facilitator for each team who makes sure there is no one dominant voice or few dominant voices or few dominant perspectives. Make sure there's a blend of ideas, a confluence of ideas happening on throughout the process, and making sure that the ultimate objective is being reached. So that's in a nutshell the overall image of how a DTeX happens. And like I said, it's an evolved version of DTeX, so it's very similar in many ways. But what you don't see is, unlike DTeX, where you start with a version where there's no technologies and you just brainstorm about how you would solve without technologies, or you use imaginary technologies. DTeX is simplified and more grounded and shorter. It's designed to be done in half a day or 1 day, while DTeX usually take two or more days, or up to 5 days. So that's. Hope I answered all the questions.
So if I understand you well, Girish, there is this preparation period wherein through some form of eliciting expert out there are set of technologies or solutions that are generated based on a given problem scenario, let's say COVID-19 disinformation, and how that can be addressed using, let's say, AI as one technology. So that is done in the earlier part of DTeX before the actual simulation. Am I right?
That is correct, Ariel. So you could look at it as a pre-DTeX phase, DTeX phase, and post-DTeX phase. So what you mentioned now is the pre-DTeX phase, where we, it's done through another flagship event at the NATO Innovation Hub called the NATO Innovation Challenge, where we get these ideas and solutions. So you're absolutely right. There is a pre-DTeX phase where these ideas are collected, organized, curated, and turned into playable versions of ideas. Yes, that's correct.
All right. So once you have curated, or a team has curated these possible solutions, okay, then it goes through the actual simulated game. Right? And I believe all panelists have been in at least one of those. Me as an engineer, the greatest value I have experienced is that I am able to see the scale and the variety of solutions given the scenario, and I'm surprised of how many ways problem solvers try to come up with solution to a problem. But that's from a purely technological perspective, which is where I'm coming from. It would be great to know how, let's say, Laura, who's more into the social science, gets to see such an activity. So Laura, can you share with us what you think of DTeX and how it may support your research?
Yes, thank you for this question. I want to begin first by saying a few words about what I'm interested in. I'm interested in cognitive warfare and cognitive security. And this is basically manipulations of inherent vulnerabilities of the human mind by actors for political purposes. And of course, this includes disinformation, but it also includes other things such as recruitment by radical organizations, also traditional espionage that seeks to influence someone to disclose some sort of information, in other cases such as, of course, the notorious case with Cambridge Analytica. So what attracted me in DTeX is its flexibility. It can just accommodate so much, especially when it comes to cognitive warfare and, of course, disinformation in particular. I participated in 2 DTeX events. I was involved as a judge. I was declaring the winner from the confrontation session between the participants, and as a subject matter expert, I had the pleasure of reviewing the scenario, actually the scenarios, we had 2 scenarios the first time, and providing feedback for how they need to be designed. And of course, I also provided feedback for the iOS cards that represented different solutions to disinformation. To me, the biggest attraction to DTeX is probably the chance to see, my research topic a little bit operationalized, and how these solutions can actually be combined to counter disinformation and potentially other cognitive threats. So this is basically what I'm interested in, and why it was just such a pleasure, and why I was so excited to participate in DTeX events. Hopefully, I'll be more and more in the future.
Thank you, Laura. And from what I heard, there'll be a lot more DTeX coming up. It's just a matter of Girish and Serge being able to provide the bandwidth needed, meaning their time and effort. So, and as a mentor, I've always thought that one of the great value of any tool or application or framework like DTeX is how it allows new researchers going into the field get to understand the wickedness of a problem or the difficulty of the problem as soon as possible, so that the researcher can make informed decisions on which path to take. And so I'm pretty sure it's very interesting for students to be part of DTeX exercises. And so we have one of our panel member, Hengame, who is in Engineering Management Systems Engineering, as she may have mentioned earlier. So Hengame, can you tell us a bit of how your participation in DTeX, or how you participated in DTeX, your role, and how that may have helped you recognize the wickedness of the problem scenario in that particular DTeX application, which I believe was the COVID-19 disinformation. So Hengame?
Thank you, Dr. Pinto. First of all, at this event, I can find my weakness about how I can see the problem. Actually, I participated in previous DTeX, which was held last December. As I my understanding, the main goal was to evaluate the use of the new technologies in the efficiency of decision making. To do that, we were provided with 2 different scenarios, and we were divided with 2 different groups, consist of a student and military person. My role was to choose among those new technologies based on their capability and limitation that would fit best with a given scenario. Each chosen technology were used in the simulation to see how they affect the overall efficiency of the decision-making process. I learned a lot from DTeX. First of all, I gained experience working with other people who were not necessarily in my field of study to work. And we worked together and improved my teamwork in ability. And also it helped me to find a good way to rationalize the choice that I have made. And I think it especially helps me in my dissertation process, where I need to defend and explain what I have done and why I choose those. You need, in this scenario, you need to choose your technology, and after that, you need to defend to other people that why it is important and it is helpful in overall. I hope I can answer your question.
I think you did. I think you did, Hengame. And I think particularly important what you said is that aside from you verifying what you may already know, by participating in DTeX, you're able to know what you may have not known before. And I think that's one of the greatest insight, especially when I work with non-engineers, Laura or Girish or or you yourself or or Serge or Jesse, who might be joining us later, is I'm able to see a different perspective on the same problem, and that I believe is very important. Okay, so let us open up the floor for questions from the attendees, and I'm not sure how to do that, possibly by chatting in or raising their hands, and then we'll try to triage those questions. Okay? So while they might be writing down or
Dr. Pinto, you are mute.
are there I was just going to ask Girish and Serge if there are new breakthroughs in terms of applications, future plans for DTeX.
So as you were mentioning, there are always new plans for DTeX because it has really become our main way to assess solutions that we are developing or considering to develop in the NATO Innovation Hub. And so I would have as many DTeX as possible. And so now we are thinking about 4 or 5 a year, right? Because it's what we can do with a capacity. But the idea would be that we would conduct one every month, maybe in the future, if we can get the resources. So we are working right now on trust in autonomous system. We are developing the next one on cognition, cognitive warfare, and also Girish will be able to tell you more about that. The idea is that all the projects that we work on at the Innovation Hub, the ones that are developing something that could be tested through DTeX would go through it. So we are aiming at 20 different projects per year at the Innovation Hub. So I guess half of them produce something that is worth testing in a DTeX. So it will be continuing. And definitely here, that's mentioning the new project on cognition. It will last for a long time because it touches many different aspects of cognition, and it will feed a lot of potential topics for DTeX, and this is what we have on the agenda now. And one nice thing to the audience about the DTeX is that the model is very open, so you can be part of it. It's not that it's public and anyone can be jumping in, no, but it's really open to having people coming and be part of it, especially if they have a specific expertise related to the topic, so that they can make happen what you've been mentioning before, having the clash of the minds. And so when we are touching a topic through a DTeX that's relevant to some experts, it's most likely that we would want them to be part of it in some capacity, because of course they are players, but they are advisors and other roles to play in a DTeX that are useful to the model.
Thank you, Serge. Girish, do you have anything to add there?
Sure. As Serge mentioned, I can add a little more details to what he mentioned. So yes, to your question, we are working on several DTexes, and the next one we're working on right now, and we've run a couple of test runs already, is about human trust in autonomous systems. So we are trying to understand factors that come into play when humans trust AI and other autonomous systems during operations. So that's our next topic. We are working with the NATO Center for Maritime Research and Experimentation on this. And the idea is to understand the right level of trust. So it's a very nuanced topic. It's a very tricky topic because it is so subjective. It is so undefined in many ways. So that's our next topic. And yeah, and the cognition project is so wide in its scope. So we are trying to narrow down the scope on it, so we don't have clarity on the one after that. But as Laura mentioned, the good nature of the best aspect of DTeX is its versatility in being able to adapt to any and all of these topics and to any and all of the Innovation Hub's projects, because at the core, all it does is structured collaboration or structured confluence of minds. So that's we're planning to improve the model as we go. We are trying to implement new tools that will help us help, like sorting ideas through categorization. We're trying to create an interface for that. So we're trying to make it into more of a standardized tool that can be used for all of these DTexes. So we're also working on the process constantly.
All right. Thank you, Gary. So there is a question typed in, and I'll read that to everyone. One of the attendee asked, are there any specific validation and verification approaches for the discussed context? So let me interpret this, and I'll try responding to that based on my experience. So from an engineering perspective, I see the validation and verification partly addressed in the actual DTeX event because of the experts being in one environment, if it is virtual, or within one team, if it is face-to-face, or around a table, if it is a live exercise. And that becomes a form of expert validation. At least in systems engineering, that's one of our struggle, is how to shorten that time period wherein a certain technology gets to be validated or verified from various perspectives. And I believe that leads to the exact title of our session, is how we can vet technologies quicker, more reliably via this DTeX approach. But then again, that's just my opinion. Any other responses to how DTeX can aid in validation and verification from any other panelists, please?
Yeah, I think that's very important question. It's a permanent priority on our side to be scientific about what we extract from that, and that's not straightforward because we are dealing with abstract and complex problems. So it is not, we are not tackling the technologies at their technological level only. We are really trying to figure out how they integrate with a bigger picture when it becomes multidisciplinary. How does one technology that actually is working, is already validated as a standalone technology doing its purpose, how will it integrate into operation? And there, even if there are simulation models that can be used, none of them is exhaustive. So none of it is giving a black on white answer to the question of the validation. And so, as you said, Ariel, it's basically having experts provide their opinions and their personal assessment based on what fact can be collected through the DTeX itself, and get closer to the truth of it. And depending on the topic, there are different ways to do that. And the one that we are tackling right now with trust in an autonomous system is very interesting, because the concept of trust is something that is not easy to assess, and we have been progressing really nicely over the last weeks on how to basically make it factual and scientific. But at the end of the day, there will be a portion that is not at all quantifiable, I think, in each DTeX, because this is exactly what we need to touch, what is not quantifiable. And a methodology that we've been applying at the Innovation Hub, even outside of the DTeX, because we do a lot more of events in which we get experts' opinion and we need to sort them out. And so we would go to through assessing actually how much an opinion is supported and what's the credibility of the people supporting it or opposing it. You know, when it comes to pure concepts, we do that, and at least in NATO, they recognize that way of assessing and validating concepts that are abstract based on who are the experts, what their credibility about the topic, and this is quantifiable. We have a grid to assess the credibility of experts in one topic or another, and so we can come up with, let's say, priorities for the best ideas and things like that. That's an example of how we do that.
Thank you, Serge. Any other? Yes, go ahead, please.
You already mentioned this area, but I think you know, involving the experts, not just in the experts involved in several stages. Like I said, the pre-DTeX stage, where the ideas are sourced and processed, involves experts who filter the ideas also. So we do that at that level also. And during the DTeX, the actual you know, war game or simulation or experiment, however you want to define it or call it, during that time, we have experts who come in to advise the participants by hopping on to each team as they try to you know, go through the process of DTeX to solve the scenario best with the best ideas. We have experts go in and advise them. And actually, during the DTeX that happened last December, where Hengame and Laura were involved, we had experts from academia and NATO experts in you know, from that topic come in to do that. So it happens at the DTeX level and the pre-DTeX level, and also the post-DTeX level, because when we take these results to discuss, you know, we do consult with you know, with some subject matter experts and end users, because at the end of the day, end users are you know, the ultimate you know, customers. So so I think throughout the process, we make sure that's you know, that's part of it.
Thank you, Gary. Anything else from the panelists before we move on to the next question?
I just want to add something very quickly. So the NATO Innovation Hub was kind enough to allow me to use DTeX for one of my classes. And it was very interesting because the first DTeX in which I was involved, we had more than 40 iOS cards, more than 40 proposed solutions. And then for the second DTeX, we decided to decrease the number of solutions to, well, just cut them in half, basically. But to my students, I gave all of the solutions, and it was interesting because they picked solutions from the ones that the experts voted for the second DTeX. And it was a further way of verifying that the experts actually picked important, successful to some extent, of course, because nothing is ideally, nothing is capable of totally resolving any issue. But the students actually picked the solutions that were part of the second DTeX, which were actually the solutions that were the best ones, assessed as the best ones.
Thank you, Laura. Now moving on to a next question from the attendees, and I'll summarize the question. Essentially, how can we describe the board game, I guess, quote and unquote, or that platform or environment where the various perspective comes together? So what used to be tabletop in a face-to-face exercise may now be completely virtual. How does that look like? So let me start off, at least the way I remember when things were still face-to-face. So it was similar to a tabletop exercise with special attention to making some details of the scenario realistic. For example, I remember us being given maps, okay, wherein based on those maps, we or the participant gets to base their decision and rationalize their decision. That was in the face-to-face environment. Um, how about in the more virtual environment? Can you describe how it may look like for those who may have not attended DTeX, Girish or Serge?
Yes, so basically, if you want to find actually more details about the initial concept of DTeX and CDAG, you can find them online. I can also share the link with you, but it's very easy. Most of the time I don't look at on my computer. I just Google it and you find NATO Disruptive Technology as a game, and you find the concept. It is public, and the one you find there is really one of the initial versions. So it does not evolve. So when we started to work on DTeX, we moved away from that, let's say, definition of DTag, and so we didn't touch the concept. You have it how it was. Now, as you mentioned, Ariel, it's tabletop, but the concept is detailing what's on the table. It's detailing what's happening between the minds, mainly because since the model is applied every time to a very, very different concept, there is no board that can go from one to another. I mean, it does happen, but it's really an exception. We have been doing that, saying we will reuse the scenario from a previous game, so can we use the board and everything goes with, but that's really an exception, because by definition of the Innovation Hub, we don't go 2 times to the same problem to solve, right? So every time we need to, what's board, we generate from scratch every time. What remains is the methodology, all right? So when it went from a tabletop to online, basically the methodology didn't have to change much, all right? The principles are still the same. The difference is that being table or being computer assisted makes it very different when you can quantify and simulate some part of it. And that's always what we try to do, of course. What's quantifiable, we want to have it simulated. When it was on tabletop, it had to be quantified, and you might be measuring some part of the concept. Now that it's a computer supported, we can simulate much more, and so we are creating from each of them a new environment, and this is part of the development of the model, because for us the development of the DTeX model is a project, an experimental project in itself. So with a team from the NATO modern simulation expert from the center from undersea research in Italy that is developing the simulation part and the online tools part with us. And every time we try to better understand the operational scenario, better understand the different options, solution, technology, and concept, and to quantify them. Part of it can be run by the machine. And so it becomes more and more looking like a game. All right, even if definitely the purpose is to make it glossy and funny, but to get a support, digital support that would really help the experiment to achieve its goals. And so basically, if a map is needed, if we would have a physical operation, land operation, of course you want to have a map, and we would create a map basically using maps for exercises that are run in NATO and digitalize it. Now, if we are talking about the information environment, maybe you don't need any map because it's all IDs, and the one that we run on disinformation was not based on any cardboard map or even digital map. It was conceptual concepts as ID moving around, and so it's not that visual. That's what it is. But I think Kevin asking the question, so he's written to that. It's important that we understand the mechanics of the scenario and try to quantify it as much as possible, and then turn it into an interface that will be easy to manipulate by the users. And so the gaming part and the visualization part is very important. And definitely there's a lot to do, and much more that we hope to be able to improve for in this respect for the model.
All right. So if I would summarize what Serge says, is that there's no one board game or platform that can be used directly from one scenario to another, but from a developer's perspective, it's a purposeful modeling so that we make the game board or the platform be the meeting place for the minds rather than anything else, right? Okay. So anything else to add there?
Yeah,
The panelists?
I mean, a little bit of context, I guess. Dr. Kevin Mobley, who's asked this question, is now a key part of the DTeX team and works with me on the game design. He's an expert in game design, so I see where his question's coming from, and I am assuming that the reference he makes is because Serge referred to a board game version being the original DTAG, and he was using the term in a broad context. So what he meant was the maps being used. So I think he already answered that aspect. But what we do have in mind is to create something very similar to a board game in some ways. For example, interactive nature of the players using the same screen, but being able to access it almost like a board game would with different players. We are experimenting with some of those aspects, but to answer his question and to reiterate what Serge said, there was never a one game or one board or anything of that sort, except the maps that would be used by different teams. So it was just used, I guess, as a broad figure of speech. So I just want to mention that. That's
I would like to add up a little bit. For the DTeX that we have run on the topic of undersea mine warfare, we really thought we needed a 3D environment, because to visualize mines under the sea surface, a board game is not doing any good, right? Because it's 2D and we need 3D, and I think that if we will come with a good example of how a board game translates into today's technology, this is that. If you talk about three-dimensional operations that are happening under sea level or in air and space, you really need to have 3D, and virtual reality is probably the direction towards where we are moving.
All right, thank you. And just to make sure we address one of the topic that brings us all together here is cyber risk, terrorism. Okay. So how do we foresee, and this is a question for the panelists more than anybody else, is how do we see DTeX moving forward, particularly in the field of this wicked cyber risk? I know cyber is very general and we may have different takes on that, but maybe that's a good thing to hear, is how this DTeX may be relevant in the cyber risk from your perspective. So who would like to start there?
I can start if you all don't mind. So DTeX is so flexible and it has so many components that you can play with. This makes it very useful for, well, in terms of like my research, very useful for cognitive warfare, all sorts of cognitive warfare. In particular, it will be very interesting probably to experiment with recruitment for terrorist organizations online. And also for other operations in the cyberspace that seek to influence public opinion on a mass scale, definitely. And as for the scenarios, you can probably design a scenario first to see what kind of capability requirements you need for a solution, and then change the scenario. It can come someone else, for example, not from the same expert, and then test this very same solution with a different scenario so that you can, of course, test your solutions. Also, DTeX, I think, allowed for comparing and contrasting different approaches, individually assessed and, of course, combined. And this is probably one of its biggest strengths. It can also, go beyond even cognitive warfare. It can also cover different cyber risks, but as long as you can compare and contrast the strengths and the weaknesses, and of course, during the 2 DTeX events in which I was involved, we could see that some solutions can work better maybe independently, and some can work very well, but only as part of a group of solutions, 2, 3, or even more. So it definitely has the capability of addressing a variety of cyber risks, especially in terms of cognitive warfare.
Thank you, Laura. Anybody else in the panel who would like to tell us their future view of DTeX in the realm of cyber risk?
Yeah, I think that as we've been touching it a few times, the importance of the DTeX is to get one specific technology, one specific discipline integrated in the bigger picture. And so when it comes to cyber, a big problem that we have in NATO and in the military and the defense environment is that it's a little too much an expert field that the others don't understand, and they need to, especially the decision makers who don't have a cyber background, are making decisions about the cyber environment. And this is what we are able to mitigate through DTeX. And I think it needs to happen much more, is that when simulation DTeX is run on a specific scenario, specific operations, to bring the cyber into it. So the participants on the military side understand that, yeah, they might be simulating a land operation, but actually the cyber risk is part of what they have to keep in mind. And also the other way around. If you work with the cyber experts, they need to understand the impact it has on the rest of the environment and how their bosses that are at a certain level are not cyber experts will be seeing the operation in a different way, and how those things actually match together. And the big concern on our side is when the different disciplines don't talk to one another, cannot coordinate and come up with a stovepipe solution to the issue. So basically, it's not efficient enough if all the cyber experts are able to solve the problem, but the people working in the next office don't understand it and actually cannot support it. And definitely we have seen an example of that when we were running one of the DTeX on autonomous system. So we had all the, let's say, the non-cyber people playing the operation, and because it was an autonomous system, they were all so happy to deploy robots who were doing so many different stuff in the physical environment. But one red team come up with bots that hacked the servers, and actually they really disrupted the whole operation by using the cyber risk that others were not considering, because to them autonomous systems were robots only. And so that's the kind of thing that we want to happen in both directions often.
Thank you, Serge. And I see Jesse has joined us. So Jesse, welcome. I'm not sure how long have you been there.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I had the time zone conversion wrong. So I joined you early for a panel, but an hour late. So here I am. I'm so sorry. It sounds like you're already deep into a great conversation about DTeX and about the kinds of experiments that have been run and so forth. And So I'm afraid that anything I say will be duplicating something that somebody else has already said. But let me just say, I think Serge and Laura both made great points about the sort of future applicability. The key thing is that there are lots of possibilities out there in terms of technological solutions, approaches, strategies, and so forth. One of the challenges is sorting through them. And also, I think one of the ways I thought the DTeX that I was involved with was really useful was in terms of thinking about how different approaches can be combined. So this relates to what Serge talked about with the risk of stovepiping, right? Combining different ones together in terms of synergies between different strategies aimed at tackling different aspects of the disinformation risk was what some of the teams really started pursuing in their effort to develop solutions. And that seemed like a persuasive aspect. One tool is unlikely to be a silver bullet, but you need to be able to combine tools that give situational awareness of risks and challenges as those develop with tools that allow for effective countermeasures in the event that a problem is developed. And so you need to bring together different pieces.
Thank you, Jesse. I think that's a great way to bring together everything we have been discussing in the last 48 minutes. So I think yours is very timely. So let's see. For my case, what I'm working on right now is weaponized cyber payloads, and I could imagine DTeX as a way to gamify that a white hat, black hat dynamics when cyber weapons are involved. So at least that's from my case. Hengame, do you have anything to add on that?
In the whole picture, every platform and every data may be affected by cyber attack. You know, we input the data and in the platform, and thanks to the pandemic, we do it in the virtual, and every data we put it before the data input to the system, maybe it's attacked. In the total, it's a cyber attack, and we need to consider all of this.
Thank you, Hengame. So we are in the last 7 minutes of our session. So let me take this opportunity to, and this is the usual question we ask everyone in the panel. Do you think there are things that the audience would would need to know that we haven't mentioned yet?
I would like to say something. If there is anyone in the audience who is a professor who wants DTeX to be applied in their classroom, please contact us. We'll be happy to help you with this. I think my students very much enjoyed this experience, and it helped them actually see what are some of the technological solutions to the problem of disinformation, because in the social sciences, if we just look at the social sciences as a separate field, the solutions are not that, not that technological. They're just mostly in terms of policy and in terms of other approaches. But it was very different to see both things connected, working together, different solutions combined, or the solutions assessed individually. It was very interesting, and we actually collected some anonymous feedback, and they were very happy with this session. So if you want to do this in your classroom, please let us know.
Thank you, Laura. Anybody else? And for the attendees, any questions?
A similar point to Laura's, and just reiterating what Serge said, while this is not completely open to public and anyone can join at that event. It's open to anyone who's interested, who wants to join the experimentation process and the ideation process by reaching out to us if they're interested. So that's just a reiteration of that point. Thank you.
Right. At least for me, what I can say is, if you think this topic is interesting, DTeX, and just for some reason reading about it in a web page is not enough, let us know, and you might become part of the next DTeX exercise in one way or another, depending on your discipline. Okay? Because as mentioned at the top of the hour, this is multidisciplinary. That's one of the strengths, putting various perspectives in one environment or table. Okay. Anything else?
I think that,
Adrian?
and let me just add, I think that the multidisciplinary aspect is really crucial here because of the complexity of the challenges we face. When we're looking at disinformation, there's a technological aspect to it. There's a great power strategy aspect to it. There is a political psychology and individual psychology aspect to it. There's sociology there, and all of these come together in a complex challenge that has military implications, that has implications for the viability of alliances, all sorts of things. Bringing those together, bringing together people from various backgrounds and wargaming it is really, really useful in terms of identifying the strengths and weaknesses of different approaches and the synergies that can come from different strategies as those are combined.
Thank you, Jesse. And as one of the attendees says, fake news is starting to become a science. Can we teach how is that happening? That's a wicked problem, and maybe DTeX is one way to chip away. If not provide a solution, at least make it easier for people to understand why it's happening. Okay. So we are almost out of time. Anything else? I'm afraid I lost my Q&A chat box. So if the other panelists may check how it looks like, there's any unresponded question there.
It looks like the only one is that one you just responded to a little bit. I think piggybacking on that question from Adrian, the problem of fake news is very much, this is one of the reasons I was thrilled to be part of the DTeX, because this is an area of research that I'm very interested in. The spread of falsehood, the loss of a sense of common set of facts, the increased politicization of everything, including basic claims about reality, makes for a very challenging political environment. It's to some and finding ways to get the public sphere to work better, to get the conversation online to work in the way we would like. Unintentionally, perhaps we've gone through a decade where we've had social media algorithms which are often engineered to spread disinformation rather than to tamp it down. And if you look at the prevalence of populism around the world, it correlates very highly with the market penetration of Facebook. Right? How does one then deal with the challenges of getting to a public sphere that is not a matter of people setting up their own echo chambers and gradually leading each other off into fantasy worlds? The DTeX that we did was focused on specifically on disinformation where there's perhaps a state actor pushing it. There's also all of the disinformation that we do to ourselves, and we have to find ways to try to address that. And DTeX provides a useful platform for thinking about this, and I think it's a very important area for ongoing research.
Thank you, Jesse. And I believe that's all the time we have. So for the panelists, thanks for joining us. The attendees, I hope this was informative for you. And if you have any question, you have our names. It would not be too difficult to find our contact information. And with that, I know it's Friday anywhere you may be. So have a great Friday and enjoy your weekend. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.